my first thought as you were speaking, I was thinking about all of these, numbering in the hundreds, Palestinian journalists who have been martyred. And I'm thinking of all the sort of professional and organizational infrastructure dedicated to quote unquote celebrating press freedom and defending press freedom. None of these dozens and possibly hundreds of organizations will make a peep about this guy. They'll sit there quietly and perform their annual bullshit. They'll pat each other on the back for whatever mediocre horseshit plagiarism they put out. They give each other Pulitzer Awards for fake podcasts and continue on with their lives. And I've said this again. This this moment in our history has shown us how fraudulent everything is about our society, how every corner, every sector, everything from education to workplace to our economy to our governance structures, everything that we call civil society, right? All, and in fact, even the vast archipelago of educational initiatives dedicated to studying genocide and human rights. All of these are bogus. These are all a Western set erected, and you can push them over. Like this is like a set for a movie in like the 1920s. It's very poorly constructed because you Palestinians collectively pushed it over on October 7th and proved it and said to them, "Oh yeah, what are you going to do? Are you going to or do we get to count as you're human too? Do we count?" Obviously, we know the answer to that. It's never been true. All of this apparatus was just for show. It's like, and so right now, when that apparatus should be kicking into high gear to fight against the genocide, they've been sitting mute and, in fact, fighting a rear action against anyone who questions them to the point where their institutions will take a permanent dive. Like, even though Columbia's enrollment numbers won't be affected, this violence that they're doing, this violence, like UCLA letting their kids get murdered, almost murdered in front of their students. I mean, yeah, they'll still be able to say, "Oh, we have the top number of applicants in any school in the US." Sure you will. But those people will know what the lives of their students are worth when the brass tacks, that it's more valuable to keep Zionist donors happy and let JDL Fash show up and possibly murder their little teenage Billy and teenage Susie from Canoga Park. Like they will allow that, right? All their every single photo on their website of a hijabi and like a black kid smiling and laughing and eating at lunch, it's all horse shit. They hate these kids. They hate their students. And nothing means more to them than their stupid, precious donors' money. They get phone calls. I was speaking to a professor yesterday. Okay. I was speaking to a professor yesterday, and she told me that she was hosting an event, and the president of the university called her. The president of the university. This is a big name university, guys. If I tell you the name of the school, you're like, wow. The president of Notre Dame. Oh, fuck. I said it. The president of Notre Dame called this professor to say, "Hello, professor of mine, lowly employee who's several rungs down the administrative ladder. I personally am reaching out to you to intimidate you in hoping that you will not pursue what is basically like a regular event that happen. Thousands of them happen every day in universities. In that university specifically, probably, where a speaker comes and gives a talk. No, but they are going to destroy their institutions, guys. They already are. So, like, this October 7th, we like what Palestinians did, Al-Aqsa flood, and the wider circle of consequences that have drawn this Zionist entity into an incredibly furious, like downward spiral. Like this is something that we will live with for the rest of our lives, not just in terms of like the memory, right? Because I believe that those of us watching this and listening to this and participating in this, we constitute a fellowship of people in the West who have what's called a moral fucking compass, who like actually pay attention to like the things of the world that like our own societies have helped directly manufacture. So we have a stake, and not just a stake, but like a duty to speak up, just as the liberals have told us since 1945 that, oh, never again, oh, you have to speak up, oh, don't be first they came for the communists and I stayed, look, whatever, all that horse shit, right? Like we're doing it and we represent a small fraction of our, and we are a fringe section of our media class. So like while thousands of them in universities and academia and think tanks, all that horseshit, they're working assiduously to cover this up, to ignore it, to explain it away, to rationalize it, to frame it. Like there are a few of us who are talking about it in open terms, who are highlighting what happens, who are working in solidarity with the Palestinians over there, who are helping to get it out there. And yet, and that entire infrastructure will stay silent. And so, if that isn't proof to you, once again, of how everything in this whole thing is just fake, it's just a fake thing. It's just like resource extraction, like finance, speculation, stock markets. That's like brass tacks of our society. And nothing means, and in fact, let's talk about the Canadian state for a second. Okay. The Canadian state has undergone a massive, like the Canadian as a country has undergone a massive racial transformation. Right. And this is to my point about how even white supremacy is less important to them than their precious stock market portfolios. Because what's happened in Canada is that you had a massive population drop at the beginning of COVID. So what they did is that they just pressed the on button to immigration and cheap labor because it's more important to keep labor prices low than to keep white supremacy rolling. So they were willing to sacrifice like that sort of that action that like that the fear that like the white anglophone Canadian has of a South Asian person, which is like a truly like a deep genetically coded fear. Like this is an old school racism that goes back centuries. Like this is like the champagne of racism is British people and how they and like Brit Anglos, like Anglo Scot, whatever, Irish, and how they feel about South Asians. Like this is a pure form of racism, and you see it in Canadian streets, you see it in our politicians, you see it in daily interactions, just like old crufty boomers yelling at some like 20-year-old South Asian woman, get me my chicken. Like it's like a this is symptom of a process that can't retain its own contradictions. So on the one hand, they need lower prices, they need low labor to ensure that they can stay ahead of like the diminishing rate of profit. They need to extract more and more value from labor, so they bring this cheap labor in. But on the other hand, their racial supremacist project, settler colonial project, which is dedicated to moving a specific kind of European to the new world and reproducing their life and slowly suffocating the indigenous cultures and civilizations that lived here, that still live here. Like that project is less, that white supremacist aspect is less important to them than maintaining low labor prices. So that's like in Canada, there will have to be a correction for that at the level of federal politics, because this is also how our system works, is that we see things in the news and then we have our political parties feast upon them, turn it into culture war. People say, oh, fuck Trudeau, it's all Trudeau. And it's like this cyclical thing. But Palestinians on October 7th bypassed all of that farce. They bypassed our entire domestic political structure, and they forced all of the ruling classes in the entire West, all the corporations, all the universities, all the NGOs, they forced them to get into a line and say, oh, yeah, go genuflect to your little Zionist precious colony. Go do it. Watch us. And we still won't, and like put all your fight forces in front of us and array them and destroy us. But you can't beat our project. You can't beat our liberation. You can't keep feeding this Zionist entity. Just last week, Canada Post said it's not going to deliver mail to the Zionist entity because of the situation, right? Israel, I mean, Louis, you said it right. Israel's temporary. And it's not just what is its temporariness, is that because we see the military end and their culture industry end and their PR end, we think of it as a real country. This is two cities. These are two major cities. Let's say three. Let's just include Al Quds, fine. Let's include it. But let's say have three major population centers. Otherwise, they are a far flung collection of colonial outposts and military bases. That's it. That's it. They have not rooted themselves in the land. Half of their people fly back and forth. I will never forget my nemesis at McMaster University. Avi, you little Dorcas Malorcas. How dedicated were you to the Zionist project? You live in New York now. I Googled you. You live in New York. You're a stock dude. You didn't give a shit about Israel. If you gave a shit, you'd go there. You'd be a brigadier general by now, probably. Okay? You don't give a shit. It is a hobby for you. When Zion, you can't do settler colonialism by hobby. You have to go and do it. And they have fewer and fewer people who are going to go do it. They have all kinds of mercenaries in Gaza. They are not like they are doing Gulf style warfare where they are bombing from the sky, bombs supplied by the American and like Anglo like war machine delivered to them in an Uber, and then they bomb from the sky, and then they send in mercenary goons to do their dirty work. Sure, they have their own. The IDF exists. Sure, I'm not doubting that. But there is 2,000 Delta forces sent in the first weeks of this. Five generals. I was just listening to a podcast with, and I knew about the Delta forces. I didn't know it was that big, right? And so like that was at the beginning of this, and now it's been a year of attrition warfare. They've lost billions in hardware, serious hardware that you just can't reproduce. They've lost their ability. Like Iran fired what 180 missiles and drones at them. Most of them got through. Their entire basis of their foreign policy power projection, like their power projection is we are this unstoppable force. We will you cannot this and a few old Iranian hard like pieces of like military equipment like got there, and it was nothing. And we watched the video as they go and they land, and like that entire basis. And I think if anything, and I hate predicting things because most of the time I'm wrong, but this attack, this Iranian attack that we just saw, it went to the core of their project because it reminded them of what Hassan Nasrallah had already accomplished by October 8th when he said, "Oh, we allow you to live here. We allow you the equanimity. We allow you the peace and the quiet. We allowed that. And if we decide to remove that permission, then you cannot live your life. You can't make your economy. You can't sell your stupid soda streams. You can't make your bullshit Apple TV shows, which are you made in the US anyways. Like this is we as hard as it is to watch what we have watched, their desperation is on is on display in the forms of their power. The size of the mushroom cloud is all they have. Like the pictures of the mushroom clouds. That's their only weapon, not the mushroom clouds themselves. Of course, I don't mean that like literally, but I mean that figuratively in the sense that the bombs actually accomplish very little, right? It's just killing people in terms strategically, that is to say. But Israel can kill lots of people. It doesn't change the reality of their gas is exposed. Their political leaders are not many. Their entire institutions are open to Iranian attack. Hezbollah didn't even participate in the Iranian attack. Yemenis stayed quiet too. Imagine if they combined their forces and they sent even, let's say, 5 times the amount of missiles. What could that have done? It's all done. It's no, they have nothing. They have nothing. So as much as we stand we sit and we like think about like, oh my god, this crime followed by this crime, is that's part of their strategic, that's part of their work, is to distract, is to make you lose the forest through the trees. And if that sounds like I'm being callous and I'm writing off the pain that Lebanese people are feeling, I don't intend to do that. That's not my intention. I don't want to minimize, obviously, what's happened in Gaza. What, 68% of the buildings destroyed or damaged? I mean, that's unfathomable for 2 million people. Like that's an unfathomable crime that will be written about centuries from now. And when Israel is just a little, it's a footnote. It's going to be a section in the library, like under failed states. Like that's where it will go. And we'll all be gone by then. Like we'll be dust, but like Palestine will live. Palestinians, the children of Yahya Sinwar, the descendants of Yahya Sinwar will cultivate olives in Palestine at that time. So I think Mikey is right, is that like this is the time for despairing is not, this is not, we don't despair here. We watch, we react, we have emotions, we go through them. That's natural, that's good. And we cry, it hurts to watch this stuff, but ultimately, we're smart enough to know that history is bigger than the individual events that are plotted in the everyday. That like that's not you can't you bomb if bombs determine the fate of history, like we would have nothing. Like there would be no history. There would just be a series of rubble. That would it. You just bomb your way forward. Anyways, that was a big long. I don't know what that was. Someone take the mic.